Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us for our discussion today. I'm Robin Odie, a senior analyst at Canalys, focusing on the channel. Today, our discussion will take us into the infrastructure space and edge computing. We'll start off in our agenda with a little presentation around the APAC infrastructure market and our view on the forecast for 2022. But the really interesting stuff comes later when we're going to talk to Ashok from Future Business Tech, and we're going to be talking about a use case in the retail sector. And I think it speaks to a lot of the changes and a lot of the things that are happening right now in infrastructure and some of the really exciting things that are happening. And it speaks to some of the things that we'll be talking about in the presentation as well about our expectations for 2022. So we'll dive into the data from Canalys, and then we'll move on to the customer use case and discussion with Ashok afterwards. So allow me to share my screen, and then we'll get diving into the data right away. So to start with, I want to give everyone kind of a view on APAC infrastructure for the second half of 2021 and the way that we saw that at Canalys and what were the trends affecting that, and our view on 2022, kind of look forward to what we expect the market to be. A little market trends summary, a little view on what's happened in the past and what's coming, and everything that's affecting infrastructure globally, but also particularly in the APAC region. We obviously, over the last couple of years, we've seen a huge shift to cloud operating models. Now, in part, this is obviously through necessity, but this was happening anyway. We already saw a large shift towards hybrid. So a combination between on-premises infrastructure and cloud SaaS and cloud infrastructure and cloud storage, and a way to manage kind of costs and productivity, and also applications in new environments. Now, this obviously has been driven a lot by cloud service providers, but also by a combination between classic, or what one might call legacy infrastructure, on-premises vendors and cloud service providers being brought together by channel partners in the channel for customer use cases. So in a way, the shift to cloud was already happening, but the last couple of years really accelerated that. And what that meant really was a significant slowdown in the growth of on-premises infrastructure and hardware sales. Now, this was obviously also impacted by the availability of hardware, and that's impacted everyone that makes any kind of IT hardware, whether it's laptops, PCs, all the way through to networking equipment. And everyone is dealing with that, and we at Canalys expect that to move right into 2022. And in a way, this has also affected the demand for cloud, and will continue to do so. So the software is becoming even more important in the management of people's infrastructure, whether it's a cloud infrastructure or an on-premises version or a hybrid version of the two. Now, in a way, some of the demand overall for infrastructure has also been affected by the investment by the hyperscalers, by the big cloud service providers globally. They are investing in local data centers, and more we're seeing growth in those. We've seen people like Microsoft, AWS, Alibaba, Tencent investing huge amounts, not just in global data centers, but in local ones too. And that's affected by customer demand. That's affected by needs for compliance and sovereignty and security. And therefore, what we're seeing is really a kind of growth of smaller, kind of scaled down hyperscale, if we can use that term. And all the regions of the world are seeing local data centers being built to serve local customers. And in a way, that's important because I think it helps with obvious issues of latency, but also helps with people's need for compliance, helps with people's need for security, particularly when it comes to customers and partners working together to create real business use cases. Now, back to that supply chain, we do expect some supply chain issues further into this year. And that also means that costs are going up. And what that's doing is it's also forcing customers to look for cost efficient and energy efficient solutions, particularly in the data center. But they're looking for ways to create a real business case around the investments that they have in improving the infrastructure they already have, or in some cases replacing completely if they're looking for a refresh. And in that, we're also seeing sustainability take a massive part of that shaping that conversation. And that's where partners' knowledge and partners' understanding of the entire infrastructure stack, from the server all the way through to the power, is really affecting and then creating value for the customer, their insight into that. And that goes back to what I was saying before about the software that manages those assets as well. So more software, more ability to manage the asset and understand the usage of the asset, and also the lifetime of that asset. That's really key when we think about supply chain, when we think about the ability to access hardware. Things like refurbished and recycled kit are going to continue to grow in terms of demand from a customer perspective. We think certainly over the next few years, I don't think that's going away. In a way that's been shaped by ethical concerns from customers, but it's also shaped by cost and availability of supply. We expect channel growth to be reasonable in the APAC market, probably around about 5 to 6% this year. We'll dive into some of the detail of that. But just before we do that, I just want to show you some long-term forecasts of 2025 and our overview of 2021. Now, at Canalys, obviously what we've done is over the last couple of years, we've had to look at data in a slightly different way. We have to look at it at a best case and worst case scenario. Really, from the start of the pandemic, we've created two numbers, a best case and worst case, realizing that it's very, very hard to predict long-term what demand will be and what sales will be like. So market share data and things like that, obviously, we realize it's hard to predict, but we have a good insight from the pipeline that we see through the channel and our proximity to the channel. It gives us insight into where we believe the challenges and the opportunities are going to come. Our long-term forecast of 2025 show that some of the multi-year refresh cycles will maintain demand through that period. We expect shipments peaking around 2023, but there's a huge amount of demand from the public sector and digital transformation as well. And I think that has a positive effect on the channel. There's a lot of channel partners that work in the public sector across areas like healthcare, across areas like legal and financial services, as well in the private sector, which is seeing a lot of demand for refresh at the moment. And they're looking for hybrid solutions. They're not just looking for cloud, they're looking for on-premises and compliance solutions to work with those hybrid solutions for them moving into the future. So they want something that helps future-proof their business. And in a way, sustainability is one of the things that's consistently coming into conversations. Our Canalys data shows from our Candor Ferro partner community, our global community of around about 16,000 partners, that tell us that sustainability is growing in terms of the number of, in terms of the amount of demand from customers, and also in terms of the customer understanding of what that really means. So I think that people are understanding where they need to be investing and what the real value is in some of these sustainable solutions. And Ashok can speak a bit more to this with that real use case we were talking about. We're talking about later. Now, in a way, what's really interesting about infrastructure is even our worst case scenarios, these are very much more taken from not from a lack of demand. The demand is there. It's about the ability to fulfill that demand. And that comes down to some of the supply chain issues and also to skills issues. We have heard some partners saying they have to turn down business because they just don't have the skills to manage the growth in that business and the growth in the demand from customers for more complex solutions. And that's likely to continue to be an issue. However, one thing we're also seeing is that there is a growth in the number of graduates that are coming out in areas like computer science and technical areas that are able to build that future workforce, to build that future pipeline. We're seeing lots of investment in graduates in those areas. More people choosing those subjects means that over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be seeing a slight rebalancing of some of that skills issue. Skills will always be a problem because demand and technology moves faster than we are able to upskill people in those areas. But nonetheless, we do think that over the next 5 years, there will be a slight rebalancing of that trend. So diving quickly into the 2022 forecast from us at Canalys, this is an APAC specific view. And because we're talking to Ashok of Future Business Tech based in India, we wanted to take an Asia Pacific specific view so that everyone kind of get an idea on what Canalys sees as being the key drivers. So networking, we're seeing around about 18 billion for 2022 as a whole, storage around about 10 and servers around about 38. Now, what that really means is growth somewhere around about 5% in the mid-range. Now, some partners will see significantly higher growth than this. And in a way, they will see that growth because they're able to address quickly customers in what is, to some degree, lengthening sales cycles. We're seeing sales cycles become longer and they're much harder to to put together because the solutions are much more complex. If you're able as a partner, and we see this said from many partners, is if you're able to create solutions that are repeatable or even that are at the forefront of a particular area, either a vertical or from an architecture perspective, you can then use that as a blueprint moving forward. And that is a real key for partners to improve some of that pipeline, improve some of that fulfillment. Some of that will, of course, depend on their ability to obtain supply. And we'll go back to some of that data that we were talking about earlier, some of that partner-specific data from our quick polls and our surveys, when they talk about the likelihood of seeing supply chain issues. It's very high in APAC. In some other regions, it's slightly lower, which shows that we see partners in the Asia Pacific region particularly affected by supply chain issues, and that's something that really needs to be improved from the vendor perspective where possible. But key use cases for infrastructure this year, there's still sustainability and energy efficiency are still at the relatively early stages of creation of standard architectures. We're seeing that there aren't really standard frameworks for what sustainable means or what efficiency means when it comes to data centers. We're seeing the UN standards, which are used by some countries as basis for frameworks for their own. At the moment, this is really around either partners creating their own frameworks or governments creating public sector frameworks around the world. And we're seeing some countries like India, like Singapore, like the UK, France, and the US leading some of this conversation when it comes to creating frameworks for what sustainability means, what kind of targets people have to hit when it comes to the usage of refurbished hardware, when it comes to the usage of cloud and security solutions, the energy efficiency of data centers themselves, and how you measure that. So we're still at the forefront of that, but I think that there are partners like Future Business Tech who are creating use cases which are really going to help people understand what that really means. And so I think that anything that maximizes energy efficiency and minimizes the need for hardware in these constrained times will see huge demand from customers. I just want to finish with a couple of the quick polls. We run regularly surveys and quick polls on that Candor Faro partner community I mentioned to you earlier, 16,000 partners globally. We ask them questions on a regular basis about what their business concerns are and what's affecting their business. So this comes to that discussion around energy solutions growing quickly, but for a relatively small base. When we ask partners whether their companies are developing solutions that help customers reduce consumption, many of them say yes, absolutely, they are. The difference, I think, is that there are very few, in terms of proportion, there are very few partners who are saying this is not something that they're even thinking about right now. And that's probably because these are partners that are focused very much on just the resale of things like laptops and PCs. They're not really involved in the infrastructure space at all. But if you're an infrastructure partner, you're very much looking at this long term. You're really trying to understand how you can provide solutions for customers, even if it's so that customers themselves can understand how to configure these things themselves. But I think when it comes to partners like Future Business Tech, they're much more involved in the overall creation of the architecture. And I think that provides people with really good use cases and frameworks for how we can build these kinds of solutions in the future. And particularly when it comes to creating the idea of what value is for the customer. So I think the primary drivers in these verticals obviously start off with the public sector, retail, automotive, telco. These are the kinds of areas that consume huge amounts of infrastructure, particularly from an on-premises perspective. They're constantly undergoing refresh cycles, and we're seeing the fragmentation of retail environments because, of course, they're looking to get closer to their customers. And as we've seen, customers are now much more spread out. They're not centralized in central locations. The last couple of years has seen people move and spread out a lot more based on obviously pandemic requirements and lockdowns and so on. So retail environments we expect to spread even further in order to get closer to their customers wherever they may be, not just in central city locations, but also further out. We're also seeing, and this is true in APAC and across some of the major countries in the Asia Pacific region who are right at the front, but also across Europe and Latin America, we're seeing a broad growth in investment from public sector in the actual broadband and 5G infrastructure further out from the cities into rural locations. And I think this is the kind of thing that provides a basis for improved delivery of things like local networks, and edge computing in the future. We're not there yet, but we still think that those plans have a few years to shake out. But I think that it's encouraging to see that the governments are investing in more local infrastructure, understanding where this trend is going. And then just finally, just to show that, just to reiterate some of the issues that we're seeing, and this is just, of course, Asia Pacific respondents only. And at Canalys, we survey partners right across the Asia Pacific region. So this isn't just focused on one country or one area. We're seeing high likelihood, 40% almost, of partners saying that they're going to see major supply constraints in most of their products. Now, if we look at this at the global level, that left-hand bar is closer to 25%, which shows just how bad the Asia Pacific region has been affected by some of these supply constraints. Again, 32% saying likely. So this is something that is affecting the region much worse. And I think this is the kind of thing that actually will drive kind of next generation solutions based out of necessity. So that's the data from us at Canalys, some of our view on what we expect 2022 to be, and some of the things that are driving probably some of the short term and slightly longer term to the middle of this decade when it comes to infrastructure in the APAC region. But now I want to turn to Ashok at Future Business Tech, and I want to talk to him about a use case that he has in the retail sector, which I think is really interesting. Just before we do that, Ashok, could you give us just a view on your role at Future Business Tech, and just give us an overview on Future Business Tech's model at the moment?
Hi, I'm from Ashok from Future Business Tech, and Future Business Tech is a 31-year-old company. We have been a small system integrator pan-India. We are delivering services across India as a system integrator. My role is in Future Business Tech. I've been with the organization for the last 28 years. This is my 28th year in the organization. We are a 100 crore plus company, and we have grown. Myself, I've grown from the lowest level possible. That's how I joined in the company as a service engineer trainee, and today I'm heading the company in terms of sales, organization, and the support part of it. In this vast experience, where this has given me a lot of exposure, and this is where we are able to derive the best of solutions and see how we can deliver these solutions to customers. Our goal is to ensure that every customer who walks in to Future Business Tech or gets in touch with us, he walks in happy with a solution around him rather than going and talking about some product or delivering. That's one of the key goals of Future Business Tech.
And so looking at that from your perspective, I know that we're here to talk about a recent case where you're working with a customer in the retail sector. I wonder if you could give us an idea of an overview on the customer and what they needed from you, and then we talk a bit more about kind of what the solution was to that problem.
So this is one of the retail customer whom we have been talking for last 20 plus years. They have been our customers since last 20 years. We started working with them for delivering some desktops, laptops, way behind in 20 years back. Slowly, we went on and started talking to them about multiple solutions. And over a period of time, they also saw us learning most major things, major solutions around that. So they got in touch with us and they found out that we can build data centers for them. And then we went ahead and built data centers for them. Then slowly we went, they have about 1,500 plus retail outlets across the country. They are one of the largest jewelry stores or the retail outlet in the country. They are one of the largest brand, in fact, biggest brand in the country today. They cater to about 4% of the market share in the country, which is a gold market. That's a pretty large in an organized sector, which is what they claim to about. And they have vast targets. They're coming up with lot more stores. In fact, every year the projects team has given us data of they open up /365 stores per year. Mm-hmm. That's one store delivered every year. They open a new store. Either it is renovated or it is a new store is delivered. And that's how they've been working. And they want to move to 1.5 store a day for everyday delivery. That's the kind of targets they have in putting it up. And the second one is the jewelry division. That's their major product in terms of the product.
So when you're looking at, you're looking at a customer that you've known for a long time and has big expansion ambitions. This comes right back to what we were talking about before, about the retail sector isn't slowing down. It's trying to expand. It's trying to get closer to its customers and to in this case, increase its market share. What kind of challenges are they faced with? And you're talking about the data center side of their business. What did they have before, and what kind of solution were they looking for? What was it that was driving their need to refresh that infrastructure?
So to give a small brief about what they had, what they did around this data center part of it is, initially they had a traditional data center at their corporate office. They moved into a newer office. They came up with this idea of building a green building, right? The corporate office for 1,500, 2,000 people. That was about 3 lakh square feet in totality. And when they built this corporate office, they wanted because they were building a green building, which is today we are talking about sustainability and things like that. So when they approached us and we told them we can help you in doing that, and that is when they got a lot of confidence. We matched their idea and said, we will build a green data center for you. We built it and delivered. So once we delivered this data center at the corporate office, their confidence levels went up, and they started talking to us and asked us, what is that we can do in retail, and how do we do this retail also coming into that coming green initiative or the sustainability initiative. They started working with us, and when we went to the stores, we spent a lot of time in each of the stores trying to understand what is that they are doing at the store. What is the IT infrastructure at the store? What is that can be optimized? What is that we can take care? We did a lot of survey. We spent a lot of time around multiple stores of theirs and trying to understand. So we went and saw, and we realized that the retail space they're using up, they're talking about, they're blocking about 400 square feet of retail space for an IT infrastructure. And we were like stunned and worried about why is that so much of infrastructure being given. There was dedicated AC there was dedicated UPS there was a lot of importance given. There was no proper management of the infrastructure. Nobody knew what was happening, but they know that 400 square feet in the retail space has been blocked for the IT only, which is a premium space. And when we discussed with this thing, when we started doing analysis, we went to multiple stores and we realized every square feet we give them back, they will convert it into a business opportunity and it will be back as a retail space. So that's one of the thought process that came into our mind and said, why not look at a sustainable, good solution or a very innovative solution of what is that we can do better in a retail space, try to save as much and still deliver the complete IT which is required. This is this one of their initiative also, which matches their initiative or their need of being a green company. They also gave us the carbon targets, saying that we need to ensure that the carbon's target matches with their country's commitment, what they have done as an organization. So these are some things which they shared with us. As a partner, we were stunned where the needs of the customers was just not IT. The requirements were reduce carbon emissions, do a sustainability model. These are the things we are talking. We never spoke about what server, what rack, what UPS, or anything to do with IT infrastructure. We only spoke about what is their long-term goal around this, what is that they want to do in this IDT, what is the customer's experience. They also shared us certain more information about what is the customer when he walks into a retail, what is that experience they want to give, who is important, is the customer important or the guy who is accompanying the buyer is important. So all this data they started giving us, And that is when we were able to understand more and more requirement. And then we started working towards it. We took some time and we started doing pilots for them. And then we came up with an initiative saying that let's see what is that we can do. We came up with this, we started talking to our vendors, our principals, like we worked with Schneider. Schneider gave us a lot of inputs about what is that we can do with Schneider. Then we also worked with server vendors. We also worked with networking vendors, trying to understand what is that we can do. As a system integrator, I can't just go with one product and say, or one solution and say, this is the solution, the rest all you figure out, right? So then we started working with the CCTV guy. What is that we can do with them? Then we worked with the fire alarm system for the retail. That's the fire suppression system and fire alarm system. We worked with every part of it and tried to understand what is that they are coming up with. We tried to put everything together and said, this is what we come up with. So the results were, when we started working, 400 square feet, we brought it down to 75 square feet. We gave them 300 and about 300 odd square feet back to them as retail space. That became a big ROI for them. They started talking to us. Then we came to power and said, what is that we can do in power consumption? Then we came up with, we talked to the respective IT vendors, that is server vendors and others, started using better servers, which can cater to, which can work in higher temperature conditions. We talked to the switching vendors or the networking vendors. We tried to bring in more and more control. When we started working with all these things, we put up things in place and we ensured that we put all together in a single rack. We decided not to block the space. We brought the entire rack into an open space, or the IT into an open space, into a retail area, and said, give us this much space and we will release you the remaining part of it for other activities. And they were pretty thrilled around that and they wanted to see. We piloted one store, improved it in the third store, went to the fourth store. We kept on seeing a lot of improvement. And when we saw the final output today, we have done about 40 plus stores. And we are supposed to roll out for another 350 stores going forward. And that's the need, and that's how this is moving forward.
I was just wondering, I mean, you know, this obviously, this is not a simple or quick way of creating an architecture, but that first pilot, how long did it take from the point when the customer spoke to you about what they needed to the point where you were able to deliver the first pilot and yeah, put that together?
So the first pilot took us more than 4+ months into the whole trying to understand, because there are too many dependencies, too many vendors, convincing each of them, and also convincing their architecture team, which was bigger thing, because they were just putting us in one room behind somewhere and trying to use that as an IT space. Then we said, no, we want to be in an open space because we are coming up with the concept is completely different. We are giving you back about 300 odd square feet back to you. Why don't you look at us? And convincing the architect, trying to bring in the same looks around that. He was more worried that customer will feel very awkward. Customer will see a lot of open equipment. There'll be a lot of noise. There's a lot of queries they came up with, and we addressed every smallest detailing in this place and delivered those things for them. It roughly took about 4 months.
I think, I think that's interesting because, of course, you're able to, I presume, you're able to scale this now much more quickly because you have a base level of how this works. You've already ironed out some of the technical issues by bringing the different vendors together. You've also managed to find equipment which can stand in an open retail space without necessarily having to be hidden away. And in some ways, I mean, I guess one question for me is, it seems very much like in some of these cases that it's about customers don't necessarily know what exists or what is available and how they can replace what they have before, but it is the value of the partner to bring that to them. They weren't worried about the equipment, for example, but they just had certain goals and certain targets. And do you think that this is, assuming that, do you think that there are more and more customers in India, particularly that are looking at exactly these kinds of business solutions, but maybe in different areas?
Definitely, yes. I will add some more things to it. A lot of other, there's a lot more exposure and a lot more customers who look for these kind of solutions are. The very first, after the first pilot, second pilot, third, as and when we started adding stores, we realized that what is the way to monitor, what is the way to manage. When that came into picture, we realized that there is something required, and we went back to Schneider, because these are all physical environment. Schneider, we worked with Schneider, we came up with the centralized software, management software piece, and this started helping us taking to the next level. Today, the guys, earlier what used to happen, every 2 stores, there's a maintenance guy who was responsible. Today, it's come to a city. If there are 20 showrooms in a city, there will be 1 plus 1 maintenance guy across 20 plus showrooms, which is slowly it is moving to region specific, saying that one region will take care of multiple cities. The reason was the whole thing is available on their mobile app. It's all connected. Entire physical infrastructure is completely connected and monitored to the second. Say they get live information as to what is happening in the store, what is the status of the IT equipment, what is the data generated, they can see what's the temperature in the place. And we also started integrating a little bit of IoT, saying that if there are challenges, why depend on manpower? They're bringing in automation, we are bringing in IoT in place and ensuring that the nearest AC responds to the server if there is no cold air, for example, just to give an example. Or the camera around, the CCTV response, they can monitor through CCTV, they can monitor. So everything has come into a single app today, and it's in their mobile app. And that's the benefit which we are seeing today. This is the reason, this is the major reason today we are seeing that it can be replicated across multiple customers, across segments in a distributed environment. And this is the way we are looking at future also. We are already talking to about 4 or 5 other customers. Out of the 2 has been already piloted and rolled out, first 2 phases. So we are looking at a lot more things like that. And with the new technology, a lot more people have started adopting SD-WAN, and the rollout of SD-WAN is also helping us in getting these things in place.
And speaking of that, I mean, talking about that software piece as well, and that's something we hear from a lot of partners, particularly as sustainability takes on a number of different pillars, but the key pillars are obviously the reuse of refurbished or recycled hardware, and energy efficiency is very much one of the kind of key areas of what people view as being a sustainable solution, particularly in the data center. How do we reduce energy consumption? But are you seeing, I know that Schneider's EcoStruxure software was a key part of this solution, and I've heard that from other partners as well, that working in data center, having a more efficient way of gaining insight into the actual asset itself really helps partners to build out something that is quantifiable for the customer, so that they can measure how much they're saving. Do you think that are other vendors in your server and networking areas, are they also creating the same kind of solutions? And or would you say, do you think Schneider is perhaps a bit further ahead on this piece?
Okay, so I'll give you 2 versions of this. I mean, 2 answers to it, or 2 thought processes around that. The first thing is, if you're asking me, Schneider is slightly ahead or Schneider is not. When you take Schneider, the benefit of with Schneider is Schneider takes care of the physical infrastructure equipment, which no other vendor does that. And Schneider also provides the APIs to integrate to the respective management tool. For example, if you take HPE, HPE has something called OneView for managing their infrastructure. Schneider provides the API to connect it. You get all the input there. So that's one of the benefits. So you get complete energy efficiency there. So if you see HPE, for example, or servers, for that matter, server manufacturer, they have their own tool, management tool. They have their own energy management tool, power management tool, etc., and all those things. But the moment it comes to physical infrastructure, they don't get data from what is the input power coming, what is the power consumption, etc., etc. That is where Schneider will help. It's work together rather than saying that who is ahead, who is not ahead. My recommendation is let's looking at together. The customer's requirement is to know complete data about what is his energy efficiency, is he getting his, is he achieving his sustainability goals, what is that he's doing. To get all this data, I think both are necessary and it works together rather than telling he's ahead or the other guy is ahead.
You mentioned there, obviously there are a couple of you building this out for some other customers as well. Are they also in the retail sector or are they in different verticals?
No, they're also in different, where we are talking to manufacturing vertical. One is manufacturing vertical. The second one is distribution vertical. There is something called the distribution vertical. That's a big channel. For example, let's take any car manufacturer today, just to give an example. They have their own distribution network, and they have their own dealer network. That's one of the POCs we are doing, and we are talking to multiple people there. And today with India looking a lot more ahead in manufacturing, we are looking at a lot more opportunities there around that. Right now, our multiple POCs happening in manufacturing sector and the dealer network sector.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that we're seeing, and some of the supply chain constraints that we've seen over the last couple of years are distributing the should we say that kind of the everything from the creation of things like the semiconductors, using from the raw materials all the way through to the finished products. We're seeing a much more distributed network of manufacturers in that space, because of course people want to be able to rely on not just one or a couple of countries for their manufacturing, and India, I presume, and you seem to confirm this, is going to see a lot of investment in that space. There's going to be some expansion there.
Absolutely. Right now we are talking to about 4 or 5 new people who are wanting to start manufacturing in this part of the world, and then they are trying to deliver these things to the world. And that's one thing that's more regularly happening right now. The needs are there, the demand is created there.
Do you think so for other partners that are looking maybe a bit further behind, or are looking at how they can create their own space within a sustainability and energy efficiency, particularly when it comes to using things like Schneider or EcoStruxure tools and software as insight to help build perhaps the next generation of data centers? What do you think are probably the kind of key learnings that you've had from the conversations with the customer that now make it easier to have conversations with new customers?
So what we thought is earlier, what we used to do is we used to spend a lot of time with the IT team alone and saying that, okay, what's your need? We are likely to do. Today, we have stopped that. We have for last 3-4 years or last 5 years, we see the whole dimension change. We started meeting the business team. Now we started meeting the management team and started talking to them. What is their goals as an organization? What is that they want to have going next 2 years, 3 years? What are the challenges they're feeling? What is the technology challenges? What is the digital transformation roadmap for their organization? How digitally transformed they are, or what level they are? What is their initiative around that? When we started having these kind of conversation, that is when we started getting more and more insights. As partners, I think we should play that role of trying to meet most of them and ensure that when we meet and get these details around that, the needs of the customer will be with us, and we can ourselves put our skill sets in place or build up our skill sets to deliver and satisfy this customer. That's very, very important. This is one of the important message I like to give to all of them who wants to get into this space and who wants to go further in this space is meet the right people, or meet the people who wants to do what is that they want to do with their organization, their roadmap, their customers, understand their customers, understand their deliveries to their own customers, and what is the roadmap of that organization, then can help you in building these solutions and delivering it to them.
Well, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much, Ashok. I mean, I've learned so much from talking to you about this use case and understanding a bit more, particularly about what you say. And I think it's the the goal and the golden rule for all partners is to always be looking at how to create business solutions rather than technology conversations. Even if the technology conversation is part of that, ultimately it's about trying to understand the customer more. And this is where I think some of these understanding the vertical you mentioned there, this is a very specific retail customer with very specific needs and concerns. Those conversations with them and with executive teams is always going to yield kind of deeper partnerships, and I think also probably a better understanding of how to continue those conversations outside of that space and in other verticals as well. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us and being able to provide us with some information. And also thank you very much to Schneider for bringing us together and sponsoring this piece. It's been very helpful to understand a bit more about how software is affecting this space. But to Ashok at Future Business Tech, thank you very much. And to everyone for watching, thank you. And we wish you all a very pleasant and happy 2022.
Thank you. Thank you all.